We're now live, everyone.
Okay, great. Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome back, and welcome to the Park Authority Board meeting of January 13th, 2021. We got through it, so here we are. I am Bill Bowie, and I'd like to call the Park Authority Board meeting to order. To conduct this meeting wholly electronically and to effectuate both the emergency procedures authorized by FOIA and the emergency ordinance, the Park Authority Board needs to make certain findings and determinations for the record, as we did at our first electronic meeting. During our meeting, if you wish to be recognized, please raise your hand. And when I recognize you, please state your name. This will ensure that you are recognized and the public knows who is speaking. If you intend to vote nay on or abstain on any item, we will need to do a roll call on those votes. Because each member of this board is participating in this meeting from a separate location, we must verify that a quorum of the members participating and that each member's voice is clear, audible, and at an appropriate volume for all of the other members. Accordingly, I'm going to conduct a roll call and ask each member participating in this meeting to state your name and the location from which you are participating. I ask that each of you pay close attention to ensure that you can each hear each of your colleagues. And following this roll call, we will vote to establish that every member can hear every other member, and we will start by going alphabetically. Dr. Adu.
Abna Adu joining from my residence in Lee District.
Dr. Carter.
This is Cynthia Jacobs Carter, and I am participating from my residence in Lee District.
Maggie Godbold. Linwood Gorham.
This is Linwood Gorham. I'm participating from my home in the Mount Vernon district, and I actually was having a little trouble hearing Maggie.
Tim Hackman.
Tim Hackman, participating from my residence in the Drainsville district.
Ron Kendall.
Ron Kendall, participating from my.
You cut out there, Ron.
Ron Kendall, from my home in Mason district.
Faisal Khan.
Faisal Khan, Providence.
Ken Quincy. Mr. Quincy.
I muted myself. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, Ken Quincy, I'm at my home in the Providence district.
Great. Kyle Stone.
Kyle Stone from my residence in the Braddock district.
Michael Thompson.
Mike Thompson from my residence in Springfield.
This is Bill Bowie, and I note that Jim Zook is going to be late, and I am participating from my home in the Leonard Mill district. At this point, I will pass the virtual gavel to Vice Chairman Quincy so that I may be heard to make the requisite motion. I move that each member's voice may be adequately heard by each other member of this board.
Ken Quincy, you have heard the motion. Is there a second?
Mike Thompson, I second the motion.
Ken Quincy, it has been moved and seconded. Is there discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. The motion passes.
Thank you, sir. This is Bill Bowie again. Second, having established that each member's voice may be heard by every other member, we must next establish the nature of the emergency that compels these emergency procedures, the fact that we are meeting electronically, and what type of electronic communication is being used and how we have arranged for public access to this meeting. Therefore, I move that the state of emergency caused by COVID-19 pandemic makes it unsafe for this board to physically assemble and unsafe for the public to physically attend any such meeting. And that as such, FOIA's usual procedures, which require the physical assembly of this board and the physical presence of the public, cannot be implemented safely or practically. I further move that this board may conduct this meeting electronically through a dedicated video conference circuit. It is so moved.
Ken Quincy, you have heard the motion. Is there a second?
Tim Hackman, I second the motion.
Ken Quincy, is there discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Mr. Chairman, the motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. Quincy. It's Bill Bowie again. Finally, it is next required that all the matters addressed on today's agenda must address the state of emergency itself or are statutorily required or necessary to continue operations and the discharge of this board's lawful purpose, duties, and responsibilities. It is so moved.
Ken Quincy, you have heard the motion. Is there a second?
This is Mike Thompson. I second the motion.
Ken Quincy, is there discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Mr. Chairman, the motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Quincy. And now that we've got those matters out of the way, we can begin our meeting. So we're starting with a presentation countywide, the FY 2020 Park Authority Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, the CAFR report. And I'd like to introduce Rob Churchman with partner Jerry Beckard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, good early evening to all. My name is Rob Churchill. I'm the partner in charge of the Park Authority's audit work and also several other components of my firm's service to the county. As you have heard from myself or other colleagues in the past, at the end of an audit, there require communications, regardless of what type of entity you are. They're the same communications, so the same discussion would be done at a not-for-profit hospital or a large international conglomerate. And I'm coming to you tonight to give you the communications that are required on the audit standards. I'm going to try to be relatively brief, because I know you have a full agenda, and I know that you want to get an auditor out of your hair as quickly as you can. Guilt by association. Nobody likes auditors around, but I have all good news to talk to you about. We have a presentation that right here, and I'm going to, as we go through this, those that weren't part of our initial discussions, I'm not in control of the screen, so I'll just ask the keeper of the slides to move forward. If we can move forward one slide, please. Thank you. Just to make sure, a quick little roadmap of the items I'm going to go over. The very last one, the purple area, is just some basically a little bit of information for you to, if you had any problems sleeping at night, you can look these things up and you can see what's coming down the pike and changes in accounting, and it'll put you right to sleep. But I wanted to make you aware that there are some changes coming to the presentation and accounting for your activities in the future. Next slide, please. One more slide. Thank you. Now, for those of you who have been part of this process in the past, or maybe you've been part of this process at another entity, I'm going to tell you some stuff tonight that you're going to say, Rob, this is very obvious. I know you did an audit. I know you did this and that. Well, again, the standards require, and they don't presume that participants in this discussion or reading my reports would have known some of these items that are required to be discussed. For example, we were hired as part of the overall county procurement to audit the authority's fiscal year 2020 financial statements. We have to perform that in accordance with several different standards because of the nature of some of your money and so forth. We have to do government auditing standards and then also generally accepted accounting standards. We also, because you have money, you're in the state and you're an authority, the state auditor of public accounts has certain client specifications. Now, they're not too many for an authority. There's a lot more for the county and entities like the county, but we still have to audit and report on items through that testing. With regards to timing of our field work, our interim field work was a little bit different this year, obviously with COVID. A lot of it wasn't on site, but we still did the work about the same time frame as before, May, June, through our virtual devices and other mains. And then that's our interim work, make sure we understand any changes in the organization, changes in control structures, do some of the compliance work we can do and so forth. And then we come back out in September, October. As you know, with the 630 year end, it takes a little bit of time to get your 630 numbers ready for audit. And that's just standard operating procedures for any entity of your size. So we come back in September/October, did our audit field work, and issued our audit opinion as of 11/17/20. That's inside of your thick document if you have it in front of you or you've seen it online, the comprehensive annual financial report for the Park Authority. Next slide, please. Overall audit results. One more, most important slide if anybody wants to see on their audit. The most important thing is our audit opinion, and we use the word unmodified nowadays. And back in the days, if you've done this for a while, it was unqualified. And the reason why it changed is because we're trying to become more global. The rest of the world was using unmodified. The means, what it really means is that it's clean. We found that your statements were fairly presented in all material respects in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. That's the opinion you want to have from your auditor. One thing that's different from this year, from last year, is you'll notice if you look at our opinion this year, and this is totally nothing wrong at all, but we wanted to highlight the reader to the fact that you added a brief discussion in your footnotes to the financials about the impact of COVID, about the fact that your agreement with the county is expiring on October 28th, 2021, and you're working towards getting that done in time so that your agreement won't expire before you have a new one in place. And then also a brief discussion on the pandemic. That's a very common, the pandemic discussion is very common this year, as you can imagine. It's just alerting the reader that there's a paragraph, there's a footnote in the financial statements that has not been there in the past. So just pointing them to always seeing that new footnote in the current year. With regards to our reporting on the government auditing standards, which we call the Yellow Book, you may have heard that phrase before. We have a report on internal control over financial reporting and on compliance. We had no compliance matters to present. We did have one weakness, and it's because of some revenue recognition related to, and I'll go back to it in a further slide. There was an adjustment that had to be made to the financial statements, to the general ledger to make the financial statements fairly presented. It had to do with revenue recognition with you and soccer organization getting funds in place for the fields that would be put in place. And that's been reported again in our Yellow Book report. Next slide, please. For the next several slides, before it was required communications on any audit also, but these are the boilerplate areas that the standards say I have to address each year, whether or not they're applicable, frankly. Some of these were not going to be applicable to you, but I have to positively affirm that to you. With regards to accounting policies, just make you aware that we're not aware of any changes in existing accounting policies. There was one global governmental accounting policy that impacted everybody, and that was basically there was going to be some standards that are going to be required to be done for the 6/30/20 audit, but because of the pandemic, the powers that set accounting standards pushed those requirements back 1 year, and that's what GASB 95 is doing. So just making you aware that those standards are now required to be implemented in next year and following years. With regards to any set of financial statements, unless it's the most simplistic lemonade stand that has just pure cash, there's going to be some estimates and judgments in place. And I'm required to make you aware that we look at those estimates. The key ones here for you are listed. And probably the biggest one there in the middle is your pension and OPEB liability estimates that are done by an actuary and so forth. I'm required to make you aware that we do look at the estimates. We look at them for comparability from year over year. We look at them for reasonableness from you and your peers. If an entity was doing an investment rate of return of 12% on their pension plan and the rest of the world is at 6.5%, then I'd have to have pause and, is that really fairly presenting the results or the estimates and so forth? I'm required to let you know that we didn't find anything that was not comparable, that was not reasonable, and not calculated consistently as it was in the prior year. Again, positively affirming that to you, but that's one of those things I have to say. I can't have you assume that everything was okay with it and that we didn't look at it. Next slide, please. A couple slides on audit adjustments. We did, as I mentioned earlier, we had one audit adjustment that was made to correctly present $650,000 of activity that was hovering over prior year and current year, hovering over 20 and 21, right around the June 30th time frame. It really needed to be recorded in the 21 period as opposed to 20. And so we worked with management and got that recorded properly in the financial statements as of 6/30/20. Next slide, please. And then there was four, and this terminology comes across as being negative or looks bad, but it's a standard term, uncorrected misstatement. It just means there were things that were, not every financial statement is going to have everything to the dollar. And there's going to be some things that aren't material to the overall presentation of the financial statements or to the readers. And so those aren't made because they're material, but if they're over a certain threshold, I have to let you, at least you know that they existed. The first one, and you've seen this in the prior years, that the Park Foundation is not presented, and we use the term blended component unit, which means it's not part of your financial reporting family in the CAFR. So we just record, or we document that material. It's immaterial for them not to be in there. The standards say they probably should be, but it's not material to the overall presentation. So, and as in prior years, they have not been presented as part of your overall, quote unquote, reporting family. And then the next three are related to whenever you have an adjustment in 1 year that's not made because of immateriality, there's very likely chance that it could impact the next year. Because if something is not made in 1 year and it should be made in the next, and should have been, then next year, chances are it's made that year. So it's just a matter of the 2 year kind of lag, 1 year versus next year. And these three items here are exactly what's happening there. Items that in one should have been reported in 1 year, but they were actually reported in the other year, and they're immaterial to the overall presentation. But again, I have to make you aware that we came across these as we were doing our audit work. Next slide, please. These look very ominous, but these are the standard language we have to use. Disagreements with management, difficulties encountered. Didn't have any disagreements with management over during our field work, and difficulties. I will say the only difficulties we had is what everybody's had this year. It's just difficulties of changing the way you do things, getting information and so forth. But Sashi and the whole crew was excellent about getting us information when we asked for it, getting it to us either through our secure portal or through other methods and so forth. And so I'm required to make you aware that we didn't have any significant difficulties, and that's a testament to finance and others in the organization in being able to get us the information in this unusual year. Next slide, please. Coming down to the last required communications, first one, consultation with other accountants. That's something I'm required. This is a perfect example of things that aren't applicable to you generally because you're a government entity. There have been times throughout the auditing industry where a company may want to ask 3 or 4 different auditors, what do you think about this transaction? Will you let me record it this way? And maybe 2 of them say yes and 2 of them say no. And the ones that say yes is probably why the company wants them, because they want to have something reflected differently in their financial statements and maybe be pushing the envelope of what's generally accepted. I'm required to make you aware if I'm ever come across something like that, and I did not hear, and I haven't in my 30 years plus in the governmental arena, but because the standards are made for governments and any kind of other entity, I'm required to positively affirm to you that I'm not aware of any consultation with other accountants. Also, required communications management representation letter. I've told you this, and my colleagues and I have told you about this in the past. The standards require a letter from the auditor, from the auditee to the auditor, representing certain known facts, so the auditor will have confidence that they've received all information they need to make their opinion. Now, the facts are very boilerplate, very straightforward, such as we've told you about all litigation, or we've told you about all grants that we received, or any kind of review by internal audit and so forth. If a client was ever to ask, can you change this one, or I can't tell you this representation, that would give me pause, because they literally are so consistent across the industry and so straightforward that if a client couldn't represent to me these matters, then I would have to worry about whether there's something I need to know before I give my opinion. Again, I have to affirm to you that I did not have any instances where where management asked for any changes to my standard representations. And again, because I have to positively affirm that I'm reiterating this year, as we've done in the past, that there was no issues there. And then finally, the last bullet here, it's just as important as all the other bullets I've talked about. I don't know why it always is at the end, but it's just something has to be at the end, I guess, and maybe for emphasis. We're not aware of anything that would make myself, my team, my firm, or anybody I'm associated with that would not make us independent of the Park Authority. If we weren't independent, and again, this a lot of times this relates more to the corporate arena, where somebody could have stock and they own stock in a client they're auditing. That would not make them independent. If I wasn't independent, my team wasn't independent, my firm wasn't independent, then the opinion I gave you on the financial statements would be irrelevant. It'd be useless. So I have to positively affirm to you each year that we go through steps to make sure that nobody in our firm or firm itself has any kind of independent relationship that would impair us during our test work. And those are my required communications. I'm now up to the purple area. I only see a couple people on the screen at once, and if you have any questions, I'm going to try and answer them. But again, I can only see 3 people, and I don't see anything on the chat. Oh, there we are. I see a lot of people now. Stunned silence.
Very good. The one question I do have is, have we discussed bringing the Park Foundation financials under our umbrella and including them? Is there something about their 501c3 status that does not allow that?
Mr. Chair, Kirk Kincannon, Director of the Park Authority. Actually, one of the things that we're working towards is, I won't say it's under our control, but it is making them part of Rob and Cherry Becker's audit. I believe that's the direction we're moving forward with.
Sure.
Sure.
Anybody else have questions?
And I know we took them off the screen, but literally my last 2 or 3 slides was just to let you know some of the things that are changing in the future. The one that may impact you at all would be leases in 2022. It's just a requirement for government, a full population on their books, because there's a presumption by the powers that be that some leases are not getting fully reported. But the other things, if you have leases in 22, 23, that LIBOR is going away. So some leases may have to be reset with the new interest rate calculation and so forth. But I literally just put this out here so you have a 1-sentence buzzword of what's coming down the pike. And again, literally, if you have trouble sleeping at night, just do GASB.org and pull up some of these, and it'll help you zonk you right out.
Very good. Very good. Great job as always. Any questions? Anybody? No? Thank you very much, Rob. We certainly appreciate it. Great job again, and we look forward to seeing you next year.
Yeah, so you all have a great and safe Wednesday.
Thank you.
I'll skedaddle because you don't want to audit it around. I understand completely. I don't take it personally.
All right, no problem. Thanks. All right. Administrative items, countywide admin item number 1 is the adoption of the minutes of the December the 9th, 2020 Park Authority Board meeting.
Second, Ken Quincy.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. The motion carries. Action items, countywide action item number 1 is the scope approval for the group roofing phase 2. Kyle?
Move approval. Sorry. Audio is not working.
It's all right. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. The motion carries. On to information items. Countywide information item number 1 is the Park Authority Energy Program update with presentation. So now we're going to turn it over to Keith Snyder.
This is Keith Snyder. Thank you. Just waiting for the presentation to come up. Next slide, please. Tonight we'll be going over a couple of items here. The County Operational Energy Strategy update with the targets that were set back in 2019, and go over the county energy initiatives that are active and that are forthcoming in the current fiscal year and next fiscal years. Next slide, please. First off, we'll start with some of the projects that have been completed throughout the county, energy related. We've done a number of HVAC repairs and replacements, lighting replacements throughout the county, and water irrigation control upgrades as well. And these are just some of the projects pictured here. Next slide. In 2018, the county adopted an operational energy strategy with the main goal of reducing energy throughout the county by 20%. So what does that mean to us? We use fiscal year 2018 as a baseline, which is the blue line there. And so the 20% reduction is shown on the screen as the red line. So far through the first 3 fiscal years, we are about 10%. We're currently 7% towards the goal, but that does not include the energy projects that we've already installed in early FY21. So that's just through FY20, we're 7% in, and we're projecting with the projects that we have already completed and projected to complete by the end of the fiscal year to get to almost 11% usage reduction throughout the county. So that's over half of our target in just 3 years. What I'm showing here is an average progression of savings every year. So based on the savings we've already attained from the projects we've installed, projecting out how much savings we would have by the end of the 2029 goal. And so we would roughly save around 30% of our 2018 baseline by the time we got to 2029. So that's very good progress, and we have some county initiatives that will help get us there as well. So go ahead on the next slide. We have solar photovoltaic that's on the horizon. The county contract was awarded in 2019, and the power purchase agreements with the vendors were signed in October of 2020. So the power purchase agreement allows us to buy power from the solar panels that are installed by the vendor. That means there's no cost up front to the Park Authority, and we only pay for the delivered kilowatts. We have 2 types of installations that are approved. Rooftop installations, which will mainly go on our rec centers and golf course houses and nature centers with large roof spaces. For those spaces that do not have roofs, we have canopy mounted option, which would potentially go in the parking lots or other open spaces. There's a price difference between the 2. The rooftop spaces are more economical, but we are working to try to balance the canopy mounted increase as well. So far, we have Laurel Hill Golf Club identified as a phase 1 canopy mounted installation, and we're currently in the initial design phase trying to get that approved, so that should be forthcoming as well. Go ahead, next slide. EV charging stations are also on the horizon. The award was given out in October 2020 to National Car Charging, and the county has a 20 location goal set aside to install 2 chargers at 20 locations throughout the county. They're divided between 10 locations in phase 1 and phase 2. Park Authority has 2 locations in phase 1 at South Run and Spring Hill. So that means that there will be 2 chargers at South Run and 2 at Spring Hill in the next calendar year. The timing and the exact timing is still being hashed out, but look forward to those coming to those rec centers. And the revenue, the installation is being covered by the Office of Energy and Environmental Coordination, and all the revenue from the chargers minus the transaction fee for National Car Charging would come to the Park Authority. So no upfront cost and all revenue. Go ahead for the next slide. And the major one that we're going to be seeing here is Energy Service Company, or ESCO. The county contracted with CMTA out of Kentucky to do energy audits at 3 of our rec centers and produce industrial grade audit which would then be reviewed and funded by the Office of Energy and Environmental Coordination. They're currently over halfway through their industrial grade audit window. We're expecting final report to come through on the 24th of January. It'll be reviewed internally and reviewed with the OEC, and then funded later in the year when OEC prioritizes all the projects and decides which ones to fund. They're mainly going to prioritize based on ROI years, but there are other impacts that they could consider as well in their prioritization. We are currently evaluating Cub Run, Lee District, and South Run Rec Centers for this assessment. And that was determined based on facilities with the highest energy intensity. Cub Run has our highest energy intensity by almost twice the closest rec center. Lee District and South Run are not also due for renovation anytime soon. So they are also good candidates for major overhauls. Some of the other rec centers may get similar equipment upgrades that are identified in the audit. Next slide, please. And that concludes my presentation. I'll open the floor if there's any questions or comments.
Great, thank you. Ron Kendall?
Yeah, I had two questions. The number one was, how does this nest in with the bond appropriation we're having for the rec center renovations? Is it something that would partner along with those kinds of construction actions, or is it something that's going to happen and then be incorporated once we do begin the big retool on all the rec centers? The second question is, when we're looking at the golf courses, are we including conversion to electric golf carts? So for those courses that don't have them already?
This is Keith Snyder. Very good questions there. I'll start with question one, which is how does this nest in with the bond appropriation? And I'm assuming you're talking about the ESCO effort with all the improvement projects. That is in addition to the bond projects. So when we did the bond process, we identified major upgrades or potential upgrades to equipment when we did the funding request. So as the ESCO funding, which is through the Central Energy Office, it's not funded by the Park Authority, as projects are identified through that and funded, we'll go to the bond list and say, well, that was funded elsewhere. Now we have money potentially for other things. But that will happen once projects are funded, and it should free up money through the from the bond itself. Does that answer your question, Ron?
Linwood?
Yeah, can you briefly explain to me how the financials work on the solar panels? I was hearing you say that we were going to buy the energy from the people installing them and they were no cost. Can you elaborate on that a little bit as far as the fees we're paying for electricity? Is it more or less than we would be paying for the electricity coming from Pepco or Virginia Power or something like that?
This is Keith Snyder again. I apologize to Ron Linwood. I did not get to his second question there. Do you mind if I go back real quick and answer that, and then I'll answer yours?
No problem at all.
Okay. So for the electric golf carts, there is no current plan to switch to electric in the books. Most of our facilities have electric already, but I will take a look to see which ones don't and get that vetted out. We would have to look at the electrical infrastructure at the current facilities, and it's not just add a couple of chargers. If we don't have the capacity at the clubhouse, it would require potential transformer upgrades or panel installations. But that's a very good point, and we can vet that out.
Yeah, just because some of it also is space. A couple of the 9-hole courses simply don't have a place to do plugins and don't have the building capacity to put the vehicles indoors.
This is Keith again. We could potentially put a covering over top. They don't necessarily have to be inside a shelter per se, but yes, that is a very good point, and I'm making a note of that right here. To Linwood's question on the solar panel financials. So the solar vendors would install the solar panels, no cost up front. They are funding all the money. They have financial backers to do it. and then as power is generated on a day-to-day basis and delivered to the facility, we would pay the providers back. So the rooftop financials are 6.9 cents per kilowatt. That is slightly higher than what we pay at rec centers, but it's about what we pay at our smaller facilities. Our rec centers are about 8 cents per kilowatt, and that's also demand in there. So it really nets out to about 3.7 cents. So we would decrease our demand and be able to benefit on a positive basis with the rooftops. The canopy mounted, however, they're at 11 cents per kilowatt. So there is going to be some extra cost up front for those installations in the short-term basis. The depending on how gas futures go, electricity is going up about 2.5 cents per year. If you look at the last 30 years, it's not a straight line. It averages up. So we would, in potentially 9 years, break even, and then after that point, we would be saving money at each installation. So we would look to pair the rooftop installations with canopy mounted to break even on the Park Authority.
So I'm understanding you to say that we actually will not have any cost benefit from these being installed at our facilities. It will be cost neutral. Is that
we will be cost neutral or cost positive. We will not be cost negative on them.
Okay.
We will.
What I think you quoted some, I forget, but it doesn't matter. I just, what are the energy companies that are installing these able to sell it back onto the grid for?
This is Keith again. That is, they're not selling it back to the grid. It is offsetting our on-site usage, and so those companies are not getting. Or you're talking about other installations other than just at Park Authority locations?
The reason I asked the question is it's my understanding that one of the problems with generating energy yourself is that the laws in Virginia made it so when you sold it back into the grid, sold energy into the grid, it was at the lowest rate that the power company had with anyone it buys power for. And this made it so you couldn't sell it back into the grid for very much money. Frankly, a fraction of what you were paying for taking it off of the grid. That's your understanding, right?
I realize it's running a little long on time here. So that's not actually what happens unless you go net positive at a location. So
I'm looking at it. I'm looking at it as energy is energy, and it costs X. So I guess my point is that these companies that are installing this are actually selling it to us for somewhat more than they could get if they were selling it straight to the grid.
Potentially, yes. That is. I don't know the exacts off of that, but we are offsetting our retail electrical costs. And what you're talking about, when they sell it back to the grid, they would get wholesale prices. So they really are saving us more than what it's costing us.
Yeah, but they're making more off of us than they would going into the grid. And I would just say, I hope we're negotiated in a good place where it's a win-win for us and them. But it kind of doesn't sound like it's a win for us because
it was a county negotiated contract, and actually I was on the selection committee, and we actually got the lowest rate that was proposed by all the vendors, and we got the vendors to come down, all the other vendors that were higher to come down to that rate. So okay. The county is getting as good of a rate as we can from each of the vendors. So
well,
I can.
At least we have the benefit of going green, right?
Yes.
That's a big deal.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hey, Linwood, I'm full solar, and you can't sell back, but you get a negative credit. You get a credit against your bill. So I have a reverse meter, and everything that I don't use, it goes back, and it just reverses my meter, and then the offset is what I see in my bill every month.
But what they buy it back for?
They don't buy it back. They give me a credit based on what I've contracted for. That's it. And then at the end of the month, if I have credits, they deduct the credits from what I would normally pay.
And Keith Snyder here again. I would say that's only if you go net positive on any given bill period. If you install only 50% or less of your capacity, you're potentially never going to go net positive. So you would only be offsetting your wholesale price. And so you would not see a credit. You would just see a less price from Dominion, but we would still pay our vendors, and the total price should be less than what we paid currently.
It works out. It works out pretty good. I had a 72% recovery in 2020 overall. All right. Any other questions? Thank you very, very much, Keith. Appreciate it. All right. Countywide information item number 2 is the annual Tysons and Reston update. Andy Dorlester is up.
Hi, good evening. This is Andy Dorlester. I am Development Review Supervisor in the Park Planning and Development Division, and I have been the Tysons Park Planner for the last decade or so. I'm going, along with my colleague Jasmine Kim, going to give you an update on how we're doing towards getting new urban parks in Tysons and Reston. So next slide, I will start with Tysons. Well, that's me. You can go to the next slide. So I'm sure most of you know that the Board of Supervisors adopted a vision for Tysons in 2010 that includes new park spaces using an urban park typology and establishing new urban parkland standards for Fairfax County so that as Tysons grows and develops, we can have new parks coming along with that development. In 2017, the board adopted an amendment to the plan, which includes this map you see here. That is the Conceptual Parks and Open Space Network for Tysons. Next slide. My screen has frozen, so I'm not sure if the slide has advanced.
It's showing the 10 new parks.
Oh dear. I can't actually see what you see. Ken, you'll just tell me what you see and I can speak to it. So in the last 10 years, 10 new parks have been built by developers and open to the public. And those are the ones displayed in purple on your screen. And a number of other parks have been offered to be built, and those are shown on your screen in blue. And the overall amount of new park spaces proffered for Tysons is over 90 new acres. I'm just opening my own PowerPoint slide here on my other screen so I can actually see what I'm speaking to. Don't mind? Okay, so next slide. So here are some examples of new public plazas that have been open to the public. The one at the Tysons Corner Center Mall at the Metro Station, and also at the Borough Development, which is near the Greensboro Metro Station. And those are civic plazas for public gatherings if and when we get back to that point when we can gather together in public for events. Next slide. We've also seen new small footprint active recreation facilities opened to the public in Tysons, including playgrounds, dog parks, and sport courts. Here are a few examples. And there are a number, many more offered to be built, up to 30 more sport courts as an example, and half a dozen dog parks, many playgrounds. And these will be built and open to the public with each new building that is constructed and comes online for public use. Next slide. We've also seen stream restorations completed and underway and new trail connections made. The Arboro Stream, which is now part of the Ken Lawrence Park in the north central part of Tysons, had a full stream restoration funded by a developer.
This is Mike Thompson. Did we lose her or did I just lose audio?
Well, we lost.
We lost.
I believe we lost Andy, so we'll reach out to Andy. Stephanie, are you on?
I am. I was going to also see if Jasmine is there, and if she's got the information we could continue. Or Anna.
I'm here. Can you all hear me? Because I had hard time turning on my video and audio.
We can hear you, but you're a little bit quiet.
Okay.
Can you proceed with the presentation?
Actually, I need my notes. Hold on.
Hi, can everyone hear me? This is Anna Bentley I'm the park planning manager. I've reached Andy and she's reconnecting to the call. Jasmine, were you going to?
I could go ahead.
Great, thank you so much.
Thanks, Jasmine. And Anna.
So this is a view of stream restoration and trail connections that have been completed. The City Lines Arbor Road development.
I'm back. So sorry about all of that. I understand you could hear me up to when I was talking about the stream restoration. So we've had a stream restoration completed at Ken Lawrence Park. That's the Arbor Road stream. There's also a new trail there that connects West Park Drive to Jones Branch Drive. There's a new trail connection called the Vesper Trail because it connects Vesper Drive on the Vienna side of Tyson's through to Route 7 and the Spring Hill Metro Station. And just this past year, a new trail built at Westgate Park and Scotts Run Stream Valley Park, connecting Garrity Drive on the Falls Church side of Tyson's through to the McLean Metro Station. And I believe that a stream restoration project is also going to be getting underway there at Scotts Run Stream Valley Park. Next slide. So this is very exciting. The Mile is a large development that was approved by the Board of Supervisors in the north central part of Tyson's. It's over 40 acres of Tyson's, which is low density office park right now, to be redeveloped with mixed use. And part of that is a 5-acre signature central park that will be, sorry, that the 5-acre signature central park will be built by the developer, dedicated to the Fairfax County Park Authority. And the nice thing about this is that the development and the private entity will continue to provide maintenance, and that will not be a burden of the Park Authority. Next slide. So finally, the athletic field vision for Tyson's in the comprehensive plan talks about the need for 20 athletic fields to offset all of this growth of residential and office development, commercial development. Of the 20 fields, we're more than halfway there. There have been 3 new fields constructed. 2 at Ken Lawrence Park, 1 is Quantum Field in the southern part of Tyson's. There's been a field upgrade at Westgate Park. And all the yellow soccer balls you see on the map are those that are proffered but have not been built yet, but will be in the coming years. And the bar chart just provides you another way of visualizing where we are towards meeting that goal. So now we'll move on to the Reston update. Next slide.
Good evening, everyone. This is Jasmine Kim, a senior park planner with Park Authority. And now I will go over the park development activities in Reston. Next slide, or sorry, this slide. That's good. So the comprehensive plan provides park needs and goals for 3 distinct areas of Reston, including the transit station area corridor, which are planned for high density growth, the village centers, which are planned to be like Lake Anne following Bob Simon's original plan, and the remainder of Reston, which are planned to remain suburban in character. Next slide. The comprehensive plan also provides athletic field guidance for the Reston TSA, specifying that at least 12 athletic fields are needed, with a minimum of 1 new field in each of the 3 Reston TSAs. The plan also states that some new field capacity can be accomplished through upgrading existing fields outside the TSA at these parks. Next slide. And here's a map that shows all of the approved urban park spaces. You can see all of the approved urban park spaces in dark green and zoning applications in yellow. And over the past 6 years, approximately 50 acres of urban park spaces have been proffered in the Reston TSA corridor. Next slide. Oops, sorry. And approximately $28 million of athletic field contributions have been proffered. Also with Isaac Newton Square rezoning, a full-size turnkey athletic field will be dedicated to the Park Authority. And through Reston Crescent rezoning, a 7-acre land dedication has been recently made to the Park Authority on December 2020. Next slide. And here is a detailed view of this new 7-acre parkland outlined in red off the corner of Hunter Mill Road and Dulles Toll Road. Again, this is a concept plan that was approved with the Reston Crescent rezoning, and now the Park Authority is able to build these facilities using the proffer funds. Next slide. And here's a summary or breakdown of all the rezoning applications that have been approved in the past 6 years. With 30 plus rezoning applications that have been approved, the Park Authority received proffer commitment of more than 50 acres of parkland, 2 new athletic fields that are to be owned by the Park Authority, and numerous active recreational facilities such as new playgrounds, dog parks, sport courts, and outdoor fitness stations. And the slide also includes a list of new park spaces that have been completed that you can now visit and enjoy in the Reston TSAs. Next slide. And to give you a perspective of what the completed park spaces look like in the Reston TSA, here are some photos of the recreational areas at Woodland Park East. To your left is a playground surrounded by townhouse development, and to your right are small diamond field and sport courts off of Woodland View Drive. Next slide. And I took some more photos of park spaces that have been completed at the new Dominion West, which is located to the east of the Reston Town Center development. To your left is a photo of dog enjoying the dog park, and to your right is a photo of public art installation. That really makes up the urban character of Reston. Next slide. Oh, and I guess this concludes my presentation. Thank you very much. Any questions?
We'd be happy to answer any questions.
So that dog park at New Dominion West is a public space?
Yes. It's privately owned, but it's open to the public.
Okay. Yes, Mike.
Andy, I know this is my pretty much annual question, but has there been any movement or thoughts on how to do the diamond fields? I know that there's plans for lots of the rectangular fields, but any plans for the diamonds?
We don't have any diamond. We're more than saturated with diamond needs in Reston. We've got plenty to accommodate.
I'm sorry, I meant in Tyson's.
Oh, Tyson's. Okay.
In Tyson's.
Andy?
This is Anna Bentley, Park Planning Manager. We may have lost Andy Dorlester again. So I'd like to respond to your question, Mike. I'll do the best that I can. The topic of providing diamonds and Tysons has come up, and staff is aware that this is something we would like to start to make some moves on. So we are keeping our ears open and I can't tip too many cards, but we certainly are open to the possibility of being able to provide those, because we are aware that everything we have been able to obtain to date has been rectangles. So we are cognizant of that need and are committed to trying to find locations for those diamonds.
Yeah, I just know that this is Mike Thompson again. I know that it's a constant question from our diamond sports community, both softball, baseball, and others. So thank you.
Mr. Quincy?
Mike, I can answer some of that too, going way back to the beginning. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, we can.
Well, the diamond field conversations have been going on since the beginning of the Tysons development, and there's just a real problem with land availability for a diamond field, which, as you know, takes a lot more room than a rectangle. It's not been ruled out, but it's been a real problem trying to work one in. I've seen some attempted plans to do it, and it doesn't look doable to me, but I won't say that it can't be pursued.
Yeah, this is Mike Thompson. I know that the planning originally called for, I can't remember if it was either 9 or 11 diamond fields in the Tysons area, and so I had made the commitment to the baseball council guys and to the softball council folks that I would each year when we got the review that I'd bring it up and remind folks. That's all.
Well, I think you should, but
I'm
aware of that the number you talked about, and the subsequent plans of trying to work that in were challenging, to say the least.
Right.
We appreciate your input.
Thanks for the input, Mike, but it's probably not going to happen. Yes, Jim.
Sorry to be late joining you, but I just wanted to give a shout out to the staff. I guess it was over 10 years ago, or almost that long ago, that we adopted the Tysons plan. And at that time, there was a lot of rumbling about, oh, you can't do this, you can't require this, you can't get this, you can't do this, you can't do that. But it was set forth in the plan. And I want to give a shout out to the Department of Planning and Zoning staff, or whatever they're called these days, and the Park Authority staff, Andrea and Anna, and others who have made it happen and been at the table and made the encouragement, made the arguments, and were successful in making that happen. And I'm just, as a former employee and one who had, much of my heart into, the parks in Tysons as well as around the county, it is so gratifying to see our young professionals moving it forward with vigor. So I very much appreciate that, and I applaud them. So keep up the good work, gang.
You bet.
Thank you.
You're here.
And Andy says thank you too. Thank you.
Ron?
Yeah, thanks, Jim. I appreciate it.
Yeah, this is just a question, and it may be something someone can just send to me. Has there been a recent comprehensive plan on how many rectangular and diamond fields the county-wide needs, and where we would place them if we could?
So Ron, this is Kirk Kincannon, Director. The needs assessment we did in 2015, 2016 is the current needs assessment that we're moving through. Over the next few years, the staff will identify a process to go through this again, just to validate what we're seeing and what we're hearing from the user groups. And we'll work collectively with the county to make sure that we get that process in line.
And Ron, this is Mike Thompson. My recollection, and Kirk, please correct me if I'm wrong, is that needs assessment, it identifies a total number for the county and then a number that we think the park authority can provide. which is typically not the total that the county really needs. And it does not deal with exact locations of those fields per se. But I don't believe, Kirk, that there's a comprehensive plan for how to deal with the delta between what the Park Authority thinks they can provide and what the community as a whole may need.
That is correct. This Kirk Kincannon again. It does identify a number, the past needs assessment, and that is actually the work that's undergoing right now with the Parks and Recreation, open space, and access work that the Park Authority staff is working on. They will look to identify those locations as part of the next level of the needs assessment as we go forward. So we hope to have that better information related to equity and placement, and that'll be a key focus of the agency moving forward, and has been, frankly, for the last couple of years as we identify the metrics to do that and the ability to do that with the new bond money that we got.
Yeah, and certainly want to emphasize that, while we got that study from 2016, we're going to go back and look at that as it relates to One Fairfax and the whole equity. So that is going to change the dynamics tremendously in us looking at what we're going to do moving forward. There may not be as many ball fields, or there may be different types of ball fields. So that is not cast in stone at this point. There's a reassessment that will need to be done based on the conversations that we've had in the last year or two. So just want to bring that up.
Ron, if you're talking, you're muted.
Ron, you're on mute.
Okay. I think that was where I was going, to the degree that when we made the 2015 assessment, we had certain assumptions as to what the county was going to be doing. And now just to go fact check those assumptions to make sure we are on track to complete the things we wanted to complete, and they still are within the needs assessment that exists now.
Correct. Okie doke. Well, thank you again, Andy and team, everybody. You've been riding herd on this for the last 10 years, you and Anna. Great job. We certainly appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone. Andy says thank you as well.
Thank you.
All right, countywide information item number 3 is the draft dog park study. And Adam Witt is going to present.
Hello, everybody. Adam Wynn here. Can you please pull up the presentation? So my name is Adam Wynn. I am a landscape architect and project manager overseeing the dog park study. So I'm here to present the selected findings from the 2020 dog park study. The study began in 2019 and was produced by a cross-agency FCPA staff team. Please note that this presentation is just a small sample of what was included in the report, and also the executive summary and table of contents of the draft report has been provided as a handout. Next slide. The study used comparative and best practices research, staff observation, and a public survey with over 4,000 responses to examine 6 themes. These efforts has yielded a 150-page study report that included analytical findings, recommendations, and strategies for implementation for each of these 6 key themes shown here. So now I'll walk through a couple of the findings for each of these themes. Next slide, please. In the planning theme, the study recommends using geographic distribution and density of licensed dogs for locating future dog parks. As shown here, maps showing areas of concentration were one of the tools used in their analysis. Note that existing dog parks are shown as black dots, and then the master plan dog parks are shown as the blue dots, and then non-FCPA public dog parks are shown as the yellow dots on this map. You could click next. The study also used this information to suggest areas that may benefit from a new dog park. Next slide. Another recommendation for locating new dog parks is related to access-based service areas. The study recommends a 20-minute drive distance and a 10-minute walking distance for the more dense areas of the county. The recommendation is based on public survey responses about how far respondents were willing to walk or drive to the dog park. These findings are consistent with best practices, research, and comparisons to other jurisdictions. Click next. It should be noted that the 10-minute walk access would only be applied to more urban areas of the county where FCPA is typically not the only provider of dog parks, similar to some of the proffered dog parks that Andy was showing in her presentation earlier. Therefore, a recommendation in this report is to conduct an inventory of privately owned and publicly accessible dog parks in these areas to better understand what is being provided. The study also recommends providing dog parks in the Baileys and Jefferson districts, as they are the only planning districts without either built or unbuilt master plan dog parks. The report also emphasizes the need to build out master planned but unbuilt dog parks, prioritizing based on the report's spatial plan criteria and, of course, community support. Next slide, please. The study provides updated siting and planning tools, including graphic layouts such as this one, to provide clear and consistent information for staff and the public. The report also recommends that FCPA should continue to coordinate with the Fairfax County Department of Public Works and Environmental Services, Stormwater Department on annual dog park inspections to ensure that site-level stormwater is compliant. Next slide, please. For the design theme, the study provides a refreshed set of standards and guidelines for FCPA dog parks. The guidelines will be used by staff and may be a resource for developers who build privately owned, publicly accessible dog parks as part of their redevelopment process. The standards and guidelines include recommendations for things like size, surfacing, fencing, and other site amenities. Next slide, please. The study supports continued use of washed stone dust for surfacing due to its minimal maintenance and high durability. Lawn can be considered for dog parks larger than 3 acres, and synthetic turf can be considered as a surface to be used only partially within a dog park, but not as its primary surface. Excessive slope in the absence of a containment edge within some dog parks was found to contribute to poor surface condition, and this was identified as a key survey respondent concern. The study recommends reducing the slope and adding a concrete or timber curb to help improve surfacing condition. Finally, designated areas for large dog parks and smaller dogs are recommended as part of the design guidelines for new dog parks. Next slide. In operations and maintenance, the study provides park-specific maintenance recommendations for each dog parks. Survey results indicated that users' desired improvements include surface condition, a water source, rule enforcement, and shade. The study also proposes revised maintenance task frequencies, including restocking pet waste bags to once per week. Research found our maintenance standards and practices are consistent with those of other jurisdictions, but a gap in funding for labor and material resources was causing a gap in some maintenance task frequencies. And then finally, updated signage is recommended to ensure consistency across all dog parks. Next slide, please. The volunteering theme recommends retaining individual volunteers and friends groups, but also forming and growing park volunteer teams. This will leverage the public's interest, and in our survey alone, over 700 individuals expressed interest in volunteering. To support volunteering, FCPA should provide more robust information about dog park volunteer teams and friend group opportunities on the dog park webpage. The study also provides a revised dog park monitor checklist and an incident report form for use by volunteers. And then the report clarifies what duties are appropriate for volunteers to perform versus park operations staff. Next slide, please. In the funding, partnerships, and donations theme, the study recommends retaining free use and access for dog parks. The dog park membership and user fees do not exist at any nearby local jurisdictions, and the team found that charging fees would likely discourage dog park visitation. The study recommends discussing options with the Department of Tax Administration and to use a portion of that dog license fee to fund a portion of the operational costs associated with maintaining dog parks, and that would be for both now and in the future. FCPA staff should continue to coordinate with the Fairfax County Park Foundation to develop new and promote existing dog park donation opportunities. And we should use park bond funds as a source for funding future dog park implementation. Bond funds should be also used to construct at least one new dog park by 2025, which was recommended in the study's planning analysis. Next slide, please. In the rules and enforcement, the public survey results paired with staff observations identified a need for additional enforcement rather than new or different rules. This study recommends retaining existing rules and advocating for additional volunteers, partnerships, and clear reporting procedures to support the enforcement. A signage audit at each dog park should be conducted to ensure that these rules, regulations, and the contact information are clear and consistent across all of our dog parks. The dog park webpage should be reviewed and updated to ensure that rules, reporting procedures, contact information, and operating hours are also prominently displayed. And finally, a dog park handling and behavior brochure should be developed to further promote safe and enjoyable use of the dog parks. Next slide, please. So these are strategies that were identified in the study that touch on all areas such as planning, volunteering, and operations that would basically achieve multiple objectives. And these strategies include enhancing the dog park webpage to include new and refreshed information, such as the rules and etiquette and volunteering information. This could also include dog events and maps. The second implementation strategy would be creating a dog park, dogs in public spaces brochure to consolidate this key information on dog parks and licensing and also the rules and regulations. And then providing a single point of coordination for dog park related matters to help provide consistent, sustainable coordination and really support these community partnerships. And then finally, as mentioned earlier, it's recommended that we construct at least one new dog park by 2025 and utilize the list of planned dog parks to do so. And this will help satisfy the estimated service level need and also meet some of the community interests that we found through the survey. Next slide, please. So next steps. Staff is finalizing report revisions right now on the report, and we anticipate public release of this draft in the February-March timeframe. There will be public outreach associated with this release, and we anticipate one county-wide virtual meeting, a pre-recorded presentation, and then 3 stakeholder meetings to target specific areas of the county. And then following this public input and any needed revisions to the report, then the final report would be published in late spring. Next slide, please. That opens up the floor to everybody's questions.
Thanks, Adam. Questions, anybody?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Tim.
Thank you. Adam, on Tim Hackman, on the chart on page 3 of your number 3 of your slides, there are 2 of the geographically largest and highest density of dog populations in the southwest of the county, and yet there's only 1 dog park planned for that area, and I just wondered, and then I have another comment after that. Let me get to the second comment, and that is a constituent of mine, resident here in the north part of the county, was recently felt that he was harassed by some people with an aggressive dog, and it was a type of breed that is known to potentially be aggressive, and he was suggesting that we might want to consider perhaps a ban on certain types of breeds of dogs in our natural resource parks or in dog parks. I saw in the regulations that there was a regulation about aggressive behavior of dogs. I personally don't have any opinion on whether or not there should be a ban. I quite frankly think it would probably be unworkable, but I just wanted to mention that suggestion had arisen. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Tim. I guess I'll answer your second question first. So early on in the study, as I was saying earlier, the whole team involved different departments, including park operations. And one of the early questions was what you just posed. Do we want to ban certain breeds that may be perceived as aggressive? And ultimately, it came down to a couple of things. And number one being the ability to enforce that. And that's where the challenge comes. So if you start putting in certain breeds, it relies on volunteers and the public to start kind of pinpointing, oh, this breed's aggressive or this breed's aggressive, and we just felt that that was a slippery slope to really go down. For your first question, dog parks located in the southwest portion of the county. So I guess you were looking at that geographic distribution map. So
yes.
So basically, we've done a couple different things with the study. Rather than pinpointing one area of the study that says that we need this dog park here, the study really identifies that this area is lacking, and that basically provides all of the tools to build the plan for a dog park in that area of the county. Does that answer?
As I said, one dog park for that high density and in those two locations seems to me to be maybe not sufficient to meet the need. But I understand, and I'm assuming that it's done with some sort of metrics, and that's fine. I appreciate the answer. Thank you,
I
Adam.
thought you're talking about South Rock Hill District Park.
Yeah, south of Rock Hill District Park, those two large areas of very high density of dog registrations.
If I can just,
they appear to be the highest in the county, quite frankly.
Yes, this is Anna Bentley with Park Planning. I just wanted to tack on, and then I'll turn it back over to the chairman for additional questions. One of the beauties of this dog park study is that it looks at a number of different inputs and different points of comparison to identify possible areas of need. So certainly concentration of licensed dogs is one of them. And as you indicate, Tim, there are some high concentrations in this area. Another input that we looked at was planning districts that have no dog parks. And as Adam cited, Bailey's and Jefferson planning districts are two of those. And then we also looked at dense areas where people probably do not have their own private outdoor space, by which I mean any sort of yard. And that's sort of where we get to those access standards and the consideration of the 10-minute walk. So there are a number of different ways that we identify that there are needs for dog parks, absolutely, in this county. And you are correct that, by one of the inputs and indicators, this suggests that there could be a need there.
Tim Hackman, that's very helpful. I appreciate the clarification. Thank you, Anna.
And I will also add to that with the drive time spatial study that we found with the population in that area that most of them were able to reach Rock Hill District. But again, there's nothing that states that we cannot develop a dog park there.
Good deal. Ron?
2 questions. The first was, is there any kind of liability statement that goes with these dog parks that reminds owners that they are responsible for their animals even though they're off leash? The second was, for the map you're showing us dog parks. It would also be helpful if you included any proximal ones in either Arlington or Alexandria, because there may be a dog park close enough, but it's not in Fairfax County.
So yeah, we did consider in analysis and also in the survey, we asked people to identify which dog parks do they visit typically. And through that, we got many of the Arlington and Alexandria dog parks. But for the mapping itself, we basically confined it to the scope, which is the boundaries of the county, just because it logistically started to get more difficult as you expand out. But that was considered in the report.
Ken Quincy?
Adam, just out of my own curiosity, how did we come up with the target date for the next dog park, 2025?
So 2025 was based off of the projected population that we would have at that time. So using that projected population combined with the needs assessment, if you run the numbers from strictly a needs assessment point of view, you would need one more dog park. But of course, it's important to remember that that's only one metric. Obviously, there's other community interests and other reasons you might even want to construct more dog parks than that.
Right. Thank you, Adam.
No problem.
Cynthia?
Yes. For example, I was thinking of the Orlando Banks Park. Was there any thought given to the surrounding community of Kingstown? Because I live there, and several people had complained about the whole NIMBY thing. Yes, they wanted a dog park, but the neighboring community right near Banks did not want the noise and all of that goes with the dog park. So when you were formulating your report, was community placement a part of your thinking? And the second part is funding. How were you also looking toward funding with the Park Foundation in coming up with these recommendations as well? And parking had been a problem before when this was considered. Is that still a consideration? No parking that's available, little parking.
Okay, so I will try to answer all of these in the order. So for community development, or for locating in communities, what the report really does is it shows the different metrics in the county where basically there's opportunities for dog parks based off either drive times or a supervisory district that doesn't have a dog park, but it doesn't identify individual parks. For dog parks. That's really the purpose of the individual master plan for each park. And then that master plan goes through that community process. But what the report does have is two things. It has a suggested setback and buffer spacing that's a little bit more refined from family dwelling units. And so it has a enhanced site criteria so that these dog parks can be placed in areas of the park that have less disturbance to nearby communities. And then I'm sorry, I'm forgetting what the second
funding. So for the Fairfax County Park Foundation, I think you mentioned something about funding through them. Maybe?
Yes, so we actually have a whole section in the report, a whole funding and volunteer. We have a funding section and a volunteering section, and we worked hand in hand with the Park Foundation to come up with a set of recommendations for really enhancing both volunteering but also sponsoring different improvements to dog parks and even funding for individual improvements to dog parks through the website. And so that's all really, there's several pages on that in the report.
And last, it was about parking. There had been some stipulation that you needed to have X amount of parking spaces available in order to have a dog park in a particular area.
Yes. So before it was, I believe, the old standard was 10 to 20 spaces. And what we have in the report is we require, I believe, 20 spaces, but it's also related to what we call the carrying capacity of each dog park. So we have a standard of typically they allocate about 400 square feet, 400 to 700 square feet per dog. So depending on the dog park size, then you know how many dogs really can safely fit in this dog park. And then you can determine based off of that the number of spaces you really need. But it is on a park by park basis. For instance, if you have a park in an area like Tyson's where there's on-street parking, there's things to consider. So there's some flexibility, I guess is what I'm saying.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I guess just a thought. With regard to the dog parks, full disclosure, I don't own a dog. I have a cat who probably doesn't want to go for a walk. But I was thinking that as with some other public services, and actually I'm talking about fire and fire protection, that those individuals who have an ability to, for example, go to a library can travel that way with a, maybe a 20 or 30 minute travel to enjoy that. Excuse me, that the time distance standards to ability to use dog parks, perhaps we ought to be thinking about the related ability for the owners of the dogs to take their dogs to those parks, versus making them more accessible to, a lesser travel time. We do that, as I said, with actually fire stations in our rural areas, or we used to. So that's just a thought. It's kind of like, we've got a limited amount of resources. So how can we best meet all the needs in concert with our population's ability to access those leads? That's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. And Jim Zook is here. Jim, will you state your name and where you're residing?
I'm sorry. I'm Jim Zook, at my home within the Springfield district of Fairfax.
Thank you, sir. Thanks, Adam. Appreciate it.
Thank you all.
All right, on we go. Chairman's matters. We'll make it really, really brief. Welcome back. I hope all of you are well and safe and had a good holiday. Some of us had better holidays than others, and I won't mention the challenges that Faisal had with the pandemic, but he is back, and thank God he is well on the way to recovery. So welcome back, Faisal. I'm glad you're feeling better. And the only other thing is, a lot of craziness going on And I wanted to ask Kirk, with the vaccinations expanding, has there been any discussion around the schools or maybe the rec centers participating in vaccine distribution?
Mr. Chair, Kirk Kincannon here. At this time, no. It's fairly centered around the health district locations in Fairfax County. I think that while I haven't had the direct conversation as to the logic behind that, they know that we're available as well as the other county sites. I would think that some of it is due to the limited nature of the amount of vaccines that are actually out there, and they're trying to focus it on a few key areas right now, focused on the 1A, 1B group right now. I would think in the future, there might be an opportunity for the Park Authority to have that as one of the locations, and I'll certainly make sure that I mention it to Gloria on Friday when I meet with her, the county executive, and the other senior policy group members, to let them know that the Park Authority is willing and able to do that in the future once they get a greater number of the amount of vaccine.
Great. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
The only other thing I had is that I'm also on the Leadership Fairfax board, and I'm a mentor in their ELI program, which is their lifelong learning program, and I was assigned Sergeant Terrence Brewer as a mentee, and I had my first mentor-mentee meeting with him today. Fantastic individual. He serves in the McLean police station. He loves our parks. We were talking about that. But he was talking about the problems, major problems with parking at River Bend and at Scotts Run that he gets involved in on a regular occasion. So, I made him aware that we're doing everything we can, but that if he could reinforce it to anybody that we can do parking zones or whatever, that we certainly need it. But he loves our parks, and I thanked him for his service. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Mr. Kincannon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kirk Kincannon here. Just in relation to your comment about the parking, we do know that the county approved the residential parking permit area around Scotts Run. So we thank the county for doing that. That will certainly help related to the crowds we've been seeing at Scotts Run and having the parking issues in the community, as well as VDOT has put up numerous no parking signs along the pike there, so Georgetown Pike. So we know the police are now able to tow and ticket, which again will help reduce the numbers that we're seeing in that already overcrowded park. So thank you for mentioning that, sir. Just a couple of things we're going to go over tonight. I want to make sure that I introduce Michael Peter, who is the new division director of our business administration unit. So we want to congratulate Michael and welcome him to the Park Authority family. Mike comes to us from the Land Development Services and also worked in the County of Arlington Parks and Recreation Department prior to that. He's got 24 years of experience and has started with us back just the other day on January 4th. So we know Mike will bring great things to us, and I just want to take this moment to welcome him and say thank you for coming to the Park Authority, Mr. Peters.
Thank you all very much. I look forward to working with everyone. Thank you, Kirk.
You're welcome. Thank you. And on a sad note, we learned the other day that former Park Authority branch chief Michael Ryerson passed away, who was the former division chief of the Resource Stewardship Branch. And Michael has an incredible legacy with the Park Authority. He was around for, I believe, about 34 years working for the Park Authority. Brought so many great things to the Resource Management Division, had a great vision on how and where we should go related to that. And so as a result of that passing, I want to make sure that everybody's aware that Park Foundation is also accepting gifts to honor the life of Mr. Ryerson, who was the former manager of the Resource Management Branch. So thank you for many of you who have already made contributions. On another note, I want to say also thank you to somebody who's made an anonymous donation, both for Todd Johnson and for me, with our retirements coming from the Park Authority. So we want to say thank you, and also remind everybody that that's an opportunity to give to the foundation in the future, as you would like to make donations in honoring individuals, whether they're retiring or whether they have moved on to their next journey in life. In 3 weeks, from an idea to the first car rolling through the event, staff from the Park Services Division and the Resource Management Division installed, ticketed, and hosted the agency's first drive-through holiday lights at the farm program, combining holiday decorations from Burke Lake Park, Lake Fairfax Park, and Frying Pan Farm Park. Staff created an incredibly delightful winter wonderland at Frying Pan Farm Park. Our guests were completely enthralled. Tickets sold out like the proverbial hotcakes, including our $150 VIP wagon rides, which was a great idea. And as tickets were added each night, they sold out within days. It was standing room only, literally, virtually, obviously. Sometimes within hours, we sold out. Almost 2,000 cars drove through the event, plus 30 individual VIP wagon rides for families that were taken. And we want to just say thank you to the incredible team of staff who pulled this off. It was a collaborative effort. If you didn't get a chance to get out there this year, you need to get there next year. It was incredible. We also want to thank Bill and Regina Bowie, who provided funding for sandwiches and snacks and beverages for the staff and the volunteers who took care of operating the event. So thank you, Mr. Chair, and your spouse, Regina. We thank you for your generous support, as always. The Fairfax County Park Foundation, who contributed toward the event expenses as well. Thank you to the foundation for that. Bumgarner's Trees Care, who rented a lift and donated staff to help hang lights and other structures for the drive-through. And of course, Fairfax County Fire Department, who strung lights on the Kidwell barn for us. We want to say thanks to all those involved. And we know that social media played an incredible event in getting the word out for this, as well as word of mouth, social media. And also one of the things that we heard from folks about what they liked the most, which was the live animals. A calf, 2 goats, and a ewe, and 2 lambs, plus 6 cows were also on display. The animals were the hook that set us apart from other local holiday events because we had live animals at the farm. We want to say thank you so much to all those participating and to those who also helped staff the event. As a note, just celebrations during the holiday season this year were restricted to the COVID, and that we could safely offer 30 minutes of joy to our community and give staff an opportunity to celebrate and exhibit their immense pride and pleasure in working in the Park Authority. Staff is already buzzing about how to make it even better next year. And then just a reminder as I close out tonight on my end, make sure you submit your statement of economic interest forms to Barb Gorski before the deadline of February 1st if you haven't already submitted them. Just a reminder, make sure you get those in. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Zook? You have anything? Mr. Zook?
I'm trying to get on.
You're on.
No, thank you, everybody. Be safe.
Okay. Ken Quincy?
I just have a very brief comment to build on what Mr. Zook said about the staff at Tyson's. I'd like to extend that to the way the staff and Kirk and his management team have handled this, the park's role in addressing the whole COVID-19 scenario. The parks have just been overloaded with people and probably used to death, but the staff is always there. It's always there, period. Doing the job. Thank you.
Absolutely. Abena? Abena?
Hi, pass.
Cynthia?
Happy New Year, everyone. That's it. I pass.
Okay. Faisal?
I'll pass her.
Kyle?
Nothing for me, thank you.
Linwood.
It is with great pride that I would like to let everyone know that the first multilingual park planning meeting was held in the Mount Vernon district last week. It went extremely well due to our very competent staff. Headliners were Judy, Adam, and Stephanie did all the interpretation. And I'll tell you what, it looked like we've been doing those for a while. It really looked like we knew what we were doing. And I think it was very well received by the community. I know there were 24 participants from the community in the meeting itself. And I just can't say enough thank you to staff who put that together and how good a job they did, and how proud I am that the first one of those meetings was in the Mount Vernon Magisterial District. Bravo, bravo to staff, and bravo to us for going down that road. It's the right place to be. The language we used was Spanish, which is, I mean, it's got to be at least half the population in that area. So thanks again for staff who did that. One more little thanks to, I thought you guys would be more excited about that. Anyway, one more thanks to Kelly Davis for coming out last night and giving us her evening at the South County Federation meeting. There were some concerns raised in the last month over some of the plans in Central Green, and she answered questions very thoroughly. I think she did a great job. And trying to figure out a clever little way to see this. I think she even calmed the grumpy old men down there, and I don't mind if that goes in the minutes. Anyway, that's all I have.
Right. Maggie?
Happy New Year to everybody. Bring inquiries from citizens about status of this. It's appreciated. Some of the great
Michael.
Thank you, sir. I'll pass.
Tim?
Tim Hackman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a brief matter. It's occurred to me that it might be helpful to have a program or fund which would complement or supplement the Maston Brook Grant program. Just to give you a quick example, Riverbend Park has a need for a new patrol boat to be able to operate their revenue-producing boat rental and kayak rental programs. And the Friends of Riverbend was prepared to give them $13,000 toward the $26,000 cost for such a patrol boat, and had applied for a Maston Brook grant to do that. Upon advice of a bond counsel, it was determined that that would not, a patrol boat was not a capital improvement project under the terms of the Maston Brook and the bond money which funded it, the bonds which funded it, and therefore the grant was denied. And I have no problem at all with that determination. And also staff is working to try to come up with a workaround so that we can still take advantage of that. Nevertheless, that takes up staff time. And it seems to me that if we had a fixed program in place that would allow us to use those third-party funds more easily for things that we need or to further our mission, that would be potentially a beneficial thing. So just I mentioned that for your consideration. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, just real quick, Tim, you may want to look at Neighborhood and Community Services mini grant program for turf fields. That may provide you a model for doing exactly that.
Thank you.
And you've also got directed giving that we may be able to set something up with the Park Foundation.
Yes, clearly they could give the money to the Park Foundation and you could raise additional funds that would take time. And in this particular case, they're trying to make sure they have a boat rental program in place for this for the summer. So,
Right.
but yes, good suggestion. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Kendall, you all set?
Yeah, I just want to thank all the staff for all the work they're doing. There's a ton of things that happen behind the scenes that make everything work fairly seamlessly, and folks don't get the recognition they deserve for doing that. That being said, I'm looking at 2021. Hopefully, we can backfill some of these positions along with the new director so that everybody gets a little bit of relief in 2021.
We can only hope and pray for sure. All right. With that, we are going to go into closed session.
This is Mike Thompson. I move the Park Authority Board recess and convene in closed session for the discussion and consideration of matters enumerated in Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711 and listed in the agenda for the meeting as follows. Discussion or consideration of the acquisition of real property for a public purpose or for the disposition of publicly held real property where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2-3711A3 and discussion of personnel matter pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2-3711A1.
You're on mute, Ken.
Ken, whoops.
You're on. No, you're muted now, Ken.
This is Tim Hackman. I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Tim.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we are in closed session for approximately 1 hour.
Mr. Chair, just a reminder to the Park Authority staff that if you should not be in closed session if you have not received a communication from.
Well, how about that Washington football team?
How about that team?
Just trying to get some discussion going here. You know?
Oh my gosh. I know. Crazy. So we'll see what they come back with next year. Will they be the Washington football team again next year, or what will
We
they
can't have
be?
these discussions. We're in closed session.
Back in open session, guys.
Oh, I'm sorry. That was wrong.
This is Mike Thompson. I move the Park Authority Board return to open session.
Ken Quincy, I second the motion.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nay. We are out of closed session.
This is Mike Thompson. I move the Park Authority Board certify to the best of each member's knowledge only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under Virginia Code 2.2-3712 and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered in the meeting by the board.
Ken Quincy, I second the motion.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Okay. With that, we are adjourned this evening. Thank you, everybody, for your patience. It was a long go, but we'll see
Cheers,
you again
everybody.
next Tuesday. Have a great evening.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Cheers.
All right. Bye-bye.
Be safe.
You too.